Good morning. Um, let's take a look at Psalm 48. Now, the last psalm we looked at was 45. 46 and 47 are good, but they're pretty straightforward. It's all about God protecting Israel, God being a refuge. We come to Psalm 48. I have gone ahead and copied that into a Word document. So let's read through the psalm. We'll make a few comments on it as we read. This is a song, a psalm of the descendants of Korah. All of these songs have been identified as from the descendants of Korah. Psalm 45, we determined, was from Solomon's time. Um, this may be as well. How great is the Lord, how deserving of praise in the city of our God, which sits on his holy mountain. It's high and magnificent. The whole earth rejoices to see it. Mount Zion, the holy mountain, is the city of the great king. God himself is in Jerusalem's towers, revealing himself as its defender. The kings of the earth joined forces and advanced against the city, but when they saw it, they were stunned, they were terrified and ran away. They were gripped with terror and writhed in pain like a woman in labor. You destroyed them like the mighty ships of Tarshish, shattered by a powerful east wind. We've heard of the city's glory, but now we've seen it ourselves. The city of the Lord of heaven's armies. It's the city of our God. He will make it safe forever. And then an instrumental interlude, Selah. Now you'll notice all of the references here to the city of our God. Let's put that in green. The city of the great king. You just get reference after reference to the city. And the city is glorious. It's identified as Jerusalem, but more to the point, it's identified as Mount Zion. Now, let's come down to the second part. Oh God, we meditate on your unfailing love as we worship in your temple. As your name deserves, O God, you'll be praised to the ends of the earth. Your strong right hand is filled with victory. Let the people on Mount Zion rejoice. Let all the towns of Judah be glad because of your justice. Go inspect the city of Jerusalem. I think that's the color we used up here for Jerusalem. Yeah. Walk around and count the many towers. Take note of the fortified walls and tour all the citadels that you may describe them to future generations. For that is what our God is like. Interesting. He's our God forever and ever. He will guide us until we die. Um, I did want to notice that looking here in um, Bible Gateway, where is it here? There we go. We do have this reference to Mount Zion. If you'll look here, the word Jerusalem in verse 8, excuse me, in verse 12, is actually the word Zion. So let's go back into our document here. We're going to change verse 12 to Mount Zion. The other thing that I did want to notice is even up here, Mount Zion, the holy mountain, Mount Zion in the far north. So there is continual reference to Mount Zion. That merits a little bit of discussion here. You'll see here that I had brought up Bible Gateway, Logos Bible software, and I did a word search on the Hebrew word for Zion. The first time it occurs is in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 7. That says the king and his men, the king here being David, went to Jerusalem, to the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land. They said to David, "You will not come here, for even the blind and the lame can turn you back," saying, "David cannot come here." So David captured the fortress of Zion. So in 2 Samuel, it is the fortress of Zion which David captures. At that point, it becomes the city of David. Back to our Zion, our Logos software. In 1 Kings 8:1, after Solomon has built the temple, at that time Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes, the leaders of the families of the Israelites, before King Solomon in Jerusalem, in order to bring up the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh from the city of David, that is Zion. So in 1 Kings 8:1, it is where God dwells. It's the home of the ark. What we find is that in the historical books, there is very little actually said about Zion. It's mentioned here. But look at this in Logos Bible software. The word occurs 154 times, 6 of which are in the historical books, and 148 of which are in poetry, in Psalms, in the prophets. Isaiah has it a lot, but also Jeremiah, Lamentations, and then the minor prophets. So Zion appears more in poetic literature. It appears to be a poetic way to speak of God's home. This is where God lives, in Zion. Now, as we look back at Psalm 48, just look at this last phrase in verse 14. That is what God is like. The sons of Korah have said, starting in verse 12, "Go and inspect the city of Zion. Walk around, count its towers, look at its fortified walls, tour the citadels." That is what God is like. Now, Zion is the place where God lives. There is a reference in verse 8 to the temple. The temple, of course, did not exist in David's time. Solomon built the temple. So this is Solomon, or later, probably Solomon. The sons of Korah say, Go and inspect what you can see in Jerusalem, especially the temple. That is what God is like. That's where I wanted to kind of park here for a few minutes, just make a few comments. It was obvious that when Solomon built the temple, he made it magnificent. The actual temple complex took up about a quarter of the city of Jerusalem. It was huge. It was overlaid with gold. There was gold in the structure. Great tall cedars of Lebanon in the building itself. The building was magnificent. It took 7 years to build. And as a result, Solomon, the sons of Korah afterwards say, we did this to represent our God. There is something about holy spaces. There's a reason why some of the older churches um, are ornate. There's a reason why when we sit in some of those older churches, we are captivated by their beauty, by their by the somber tone that they communicate. Sometimes just sitting there seems to convey a sense of awe and majesty. That is what God is like. We come to the New Testament, and let me just uh, vary here a little bit. We come to the New Testament and we begin to look for words like temple. We'll see them referred to quite a bit in the Gospels and in Acts. But when it comes to Pauline literature, references to the temple dwindle. I want to take a look here at the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 21. There, starting in verse 19, Paul says, so now you Gentiles are no longer strangers and foreigners. You are citizens along with all of God's holy people. You're a member of God's family. Together we are his house, built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, and the cornerstone is Jesus himself. We are carefully joined together in him, becoming a holy temple for the Lord. Through him, you Gentiles are also being made part of this dwelling, where God lives by his Spirit. In the New Testament, we become Zion. We become, when we are gathered together, note very carefully here, Paul says, we are carefully joined together in him, not I, but we. When we come together, we are the temple of God. Now, there's a place for the numinous, even in our day. There's a place for us to come together and be in awe of God. Uh, a beautiful building can help that. I'll be honest with you, if you happen to live in central Indiana, go to Nashville, Indiana, Brown County. And if you go west of town, you will find a Catholic church. If it's open, just sit in that Catholic church. The back wall is a huge pane of glass, and you look out from the church on the beauty of God's creation. It is one of the most awe-inspiring sights I have ever seen. There's room for that in our lives. But what Paul is telling us is that, yes, the temple is great. Yes, the temple can create a sense of majesty and awe. But when we are together, gathered as the church, we should sense that same majesty and awe because God dwells in us. That is what the Lord is like. Hope you enjoyed Psalm 48. I look forward to sharing another psalm with you.